Hello, I'm CJ Wellerman, and in this episode, we take a close look at prominent online activist Jackson Hinkle, whom many believe to be a covert asset for the United States government. But first, please remember to like and subscribe to our show. Now let's get into it. Jackson Hinkle is a 25-year-old US citizen who rose to prominence and relevance on social media by tweeting pro-Palestine content during the Gaza genocide, with his Twitter following growing from 400,000 to nearly 3 million during the past 18 months. And good for him, the Palestinian people have been in desperate need of whatever help they can get from anyone or anywhere. But here's the thing, not all is what it seems with Jackson Hinkle. There are more red flags here than a Turkish national holiday. While many have accused him of being an opportunistic grifter who exploits Palestinian suffering for profit, others, however, believe he's a vital asset in the CIA's global mind war. Its stated objective, according to US Major General Paul Vallely, is to reach out to friends, enemies and neutrals across the globe via media technologies possessed by the United States. End quote. Now keep this in mind as we dive deeper into the curious behavior of Jackson Hinkle. But we start our investigation with US Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard, who was once associated with the 351st Civil Affairs Command, known by its shorthand as 351 KCOM. This same unit was once headed by, well, you guessed it, Major General Paul Vallely, who at one time worked together with Tulsi Gabbard at 351 KCOM. You see, Tulsi Gabbard and Jackson Hinkle are more than close friends. They are colleagues in the United States government's mind war against America's foes and friends. She not only appeared as a guest on his podcast in 2020, but Hinkle publicly endorsed her for Director of National Intelligence late last year, despite her vocal support for Israel's genocide in Gaza.
The roads are blocked. People are pouring in from all across the country to take this very important stand against anti-Semitism and against the Hamas terrorist Islamist groups that are vowing to exterminate not only the Jews, but setting this call to action to people around the world to go after and destroy and kill anyone who doesn't adhere to their radical interpretation of Islam.
Hinkle's Twitter account reads as a shrine to Tulsi Gabbard. I counted literally hundreds of tweets in which he either expressed praise for her or promoted her awful attitudes and policies. Either this is the behavior of a bona fide sycophant or a bona fide brother-in-arms. Now, in the interest of comparative transparency, let's examine my personal relationship with Tulsi Gabbard, which started in 2019, the year I helped end her presidential campaign by obtaining and publishing leaked recordings, which prove she's a card-carrying member of an obscure Muslim-hating cult known as the Science of Identity. Her self-described spiritual guru describes Muslims in the most viciously racist ways imaginable.
Violence, and it's so low class. Their teaching is so Mickey Mouse. What happened? It's so violent. They're demons who are going, la. Bullshit. There's only one reason why Pakistan has not dropped atom bombs on India, and that's because there's 200 million Muslims still in India. If those Muslims leave, immediate boom. Because they're completely allowed to kill any infidels. Any infidel, anyone who doesn't worship God the way they worship God, you can blow them up. Slit their throats, doesn't matter, no problem, you're doing God's service.
Tulsi Gabbard responded to my journalism by placing me on her campaign's enemies list, which was compiled by her campaign manager in 2020. This list was disseminated to pro-Gabbard volunteers, who devoted much of their time to threatening and harassing me and others online. As you can see, I'm ranked number 17 on her list of enemies, with my friend and journalist Mehdi Hassan ranked in first place. Other notables include anti-Hindu activist Peter Frederick and a colleague of mine at Byline Times, Caroline Orr. So as you can see, my relationship to the current Director of National Intelligence couldn't be more different than Jackson Hinkle's. And whereas I've been exposing and reporting Israel's human rights abuses as a journalist since 2010, Hinkle never once mentioned Palestine in public prior to October 7th, 2023. This is because he doesn't actually give a single damn about Gaza. He cares only about generating online engagement by attaching himself to any popular cause to boost his following and reach. because the bigger his following, the more effective his influence operations. And like all good agents of manipulation and deceit, his words and deeds are wildly contradictory, making it impossible for critics to pin him down on any ideology, belief, or organization. He was a far-left activist when it looked like Bernie Sanders was going to win the 2016 Democratic primary. But he flipped to the far right after Russia helped Trump win the presidency 8 years ago. He now calls himself a MAGA communist, which is yet another contradictory term. And he also calls himself an American patriot while lavishing praise on America's adversaries, including Vladimir Putin, Xi Jinping, and the Ayatollah Khomeini. Today, he says Netanyahu belongs in jail, but barely 4 years ago, he praised Netanyahu for having a good working relationship with Russia and China.
You know who else has a good working relationship with Benjamin Netanyahu? Vladimir Putin has a very good working relationship with Benjamin Netanyahu. I'm actually happier that for the sake of, the multipolar world order, that he is in power right now compared to the previous coalition in Israel. Xi Jinping of the Communist Party of China has a good working relationship with Benjamin Netanyahu, better than the previous coalition.
Honestly, I think a lot of those people, if you go to, like I said, I've been to those protests. Granted, I went to one in LA. I've been to a couple in LA, and I literally met tons of Palestinians in LA, and it was like, I remember because they were totally lefties. They were young Palestinians from Palestine who still have family there. But again, these are like the ugly ducklings. They come here and they push their wokeism.
This man is not a friend of the Palestinian people. He's an expert in drawing people in and then gradually manipulating them towards his covert agenda. Further suspicions were raised when Hinkle attended the funeral of slain Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah on the 25th of February. These suspicions reached a new level barely a week later, when he turned up in Yemen as a guest of the Houthi militias to give a speech on their behalf.
I am so honored to be here.
لي الشرف الكبير أن أكون معكم اليوم.
I have never met a more courageous people.
على الإطلاق لم أقابل شجعانا مثلكم هنا اليوم.
America and the Zionist entity fears Yemen more than anyone else.
أمريكا والصهيونية والصهاينة يخافون اليمن.
Because the people of Yemen fear no.
Now here's the thing. As a journalist who has interviewed dozens of Al-Qaeda and ISIS militants, I have first-hand experience in knowing how the mere act of communicating directly with individual members of US designated terrorist groups invites questions and harassment from Western governments. I've been detained at international airports. I've had my laptop and phone seized by border officials, and have been banned from returning to several countries. But here's Hinkle attending a funeral as an invited guest of a US designated terrorist group in Lebanon, and then giving a speech to and on behalf of a US designated terrorist group in Yemen, and then using his social media platform to express solidarity with these same US designated terrorist organizations. This is remarkable, and it defies belief, given US citizens are routinely arrested and jailed for expressing support for US designated terrorist groups. The last US citizen to declare support for a US designated terrorist group was Anwar al-Awlaki. He, along with his teenage son, were extrajudicially murdered by the US government, despite never being convicted of committing any crime.
The U.S. had been zeroing in on al-Awlaki's location for months. In their sights, a compound deep in the backcountry of Yemen, where U.S. military and intelligence operatives were certain the American-born terrorist was hiding out. What al-Awlaki could never know was high overhead, American surveillance aircraft and satellites were watching that compound 24 hours a day, while armed drones flew nearby. All they needed was al-Awlaki to step out into the daylight. They waited and waited. Until this morning, al-Awlaki, one of the most wanted terrorists in the world, walked out and climbed into a pickup truck.
That Hinkle has violated US law in broad daylight and without consequence is a 5-alarm fire. The law states clearly that knowingly providing material support to foreign terrorist organizations, including Hezbollah and the Houthis, carries penalties up to 20 years in prison. The law also says that giving speeches attending official events or promoting these groups online is deemed to be the equivalent of providing material support. But somehow, Jackson Hinkle is able to skip freely in and out of the United States and from China, where he's been an official state guest, and from Russia, where it's rumored he now lives. He is left alone by the US government, while legitimate pro-Palestine activists and journalists are being threatened, detained, and charged without justifiable cause. You're watching a professor at Tufts University being lynched on the streets of New York and taken away in a van to an undisclosed location because she participated in a pro-Palestine rally. I guess that unlike Jackson Hinkle, her best friend is not the director of US national intelligence. It's also important to remember that US spy agencies have infiltrated and spied on pro-Palestine groups for decades, in which the FBI and other law enforcement officers have pretended to be pro-Palestinian activists to identify key figures and funding sources within these organizations. In the age of social media, these infiltration operations are carried out in the open, allowing everyone to see who's engaging with whom and from where and how. The tens of thousands of pro-Palestine activists who engage with Jackson Hinkle's Twitter account offers a treasure trove of information to US intelligence agencies. But let me finish with this. Look, I know some of you support Jackson Hinkle, and that's fine. And I may be wrong here. He may only be a grifter who is exploiting Palestine for social media clout. But the evidence suggests he's involved in something more nefarious and clandestine. After all, I was proven right about Andrew Tate, Jordan Peterson, and Elon Musk. And I'm sure the other shoe will drop on Jackson Hinkle, and soon. But that's my time for today. Please remember to like and subscribe to this channel, and we kindly ask you please support our effort to expose and confront injustices in the Muslim world by becoming a member of this show at patreon.com/CJWerleman. We can't produce, sustain, and grow this show without your help, and we offer exclusive benefits to those who do. But for now, good evening, good morning, wherever you are, and stay blessed.